All right, here we go again. So 10.B, the conclusion, compound inequalities. All right, homework again will be a worksheet. It is attached to the email. Here we go. All right, compound inequalities part 2. So a bunch of new stuff again. None of the stuff you've done before. It is certainly challenging to start with, but once you understand it, it's pretty simple. So even though it's really challenging to start with, pay attention. You should get it, and it will turn in pretty easy. All right. So today's class is all about notations. If we think about notations as solutions, notations is the way of writing an answer. So if we think about solutions to inequalities, so I'm going to give you an inequality statement and ask you what is the solution. So there's an inequality. It's an inequality because of the less than symbol. If I solve that inequality right there, subtract 2 from both sides, turns out we can write the solution to it many different ways. Well, the first way is just simply after we solve it, well, what's left? So the x is on one side, the number's on the other side. So the solutions are all smaller than 9. So there's one way of writing the solution. So that's the inequality itself, we would say. Second way is to graph it. Remember, let's see, that's be an open circle in shade to the left. The solutions are all smaller than the number 9. The last way, which we'll learn today, is something called interval notation. And it's a way of writing the solution to an inequality in a third and final way. Now, obviously, the big question is, why do we need 3 ways of writing solutions? Well, one way is certainly a graphical way, and that's the graph. One way is with the literal math, and the last and the final way is sort of a shorthand way of writing the answer. So I don't need to see it visually. I don't need to see the actual inequality itself. I just want to see, where are the solution numbers themselves. Right, and that's called interval notation. And it's just another way of expressing. So in that blue box there are the 3 ways of writing the solutions to that initial inequality there at the top. All right, so you need to take some notes here. So interval notation uses 3 types of symbols. So the 3 types of symbols are parentheses. We're familiar with those. They look like that. Brackets. The brackets are the more, squared off parentheses, and they are a different type of parentheses. And lastly, the infinity symbol. So remember, the infinity is the symbol that expresses that numbers go on forever and never stop. And so we have both a positive and a negative infinity. So a negative infinity would have a negative sign in front of it. Positive infinity doesn't have a plus infinity. It's just the infinity symbol itself. Just like a positive and a negative number has a minus sign in front of it. Positive number, we don't put a plus, but you could if you wanted to. We're going to use all 3 of those symbols right there to do this thing called interval notation. All right, so what am I doing? You're going to be writing solutions to inequalities. Well, there's one way of doing it. There's a second way. And then the last way is with this thing that I'm about to teach you called interval notation. So writing the solution a different way. We're not making a graph. We're not writing the inequality, but we're expressing the idea that the numbers are all smaller than 9 using this thing called interval notation, using those 3 symbols right there, parentheses, brackets, and the infinity symbol. All right. So when do we use the parentheses? You will be using the parentheses if your inequality would use an open circle or if it would use the infinity symbol. That means plus or minus infinity. All right. So this will make more sense. We're just going to write this down right now, and then we'll talk about how it's used. So you're going to use parentheses if infinity is involved, plus or minus, and if you have an open circle. And now remember, we have an open circle if it's less than or greater than. Remember, there's no line underneath the greater than or less than symbol. That's when we're going to use brackets. So we're going to use the brackets if there's a closed circle or less than or equal to or greater than or equal to symbol is used. Lastly, we're going to notice that we have both a left parentheses and bracket, and we have a right parenthesis and bracket. So everything there in that slide there in yellow, we're going to be using to express our answers. Now, it sounds complicated. You might already be lost, but trust me, it'll make sense when we do some examples. All right. So quick reminder on a number line, insult your intelligence here. Negative infinity is way off there to the left. So if the numbers get smaller and smaller and smaller, the idea is that the numbers continue to get smaller, that you don't actually reach infinity. Infinity is this idea that the numbers keep getting smaller. So we express negative infinity as being on the left side of a number line, and we say that positive infinity is on the right side of the number line. Once again, it's not that you continue to count and you eventually get to infinity. Infinity is this idea that the numbers continually get bigger. Pick the biggest number you can think of, add one, you got a bigger number. Okay, so back to the slide right here. The third way of expressing a solution to an inequality is something called interval notation. So let's see. I want to express that answer right there, x is less than 9, using interval notation. So if you look at where the red squiggly line is going, it's going all the way to the left. Now there's an arrow there, that means it continues. So it's going to negative infinity. So I need to put on the left side of the comma, I need to put negative infinity. That expresses where the red is going. It's going to negative infinity. So from negative infinity, it can, if you go in the other direction, it increases all the way till you get up to the number 9. And at the number 9, there's an open circle. And let's see, I'm supposed to use parentheses when I have the infinity symbol and when I have an open circle. So we will enclose those with parentheses, not brackets. So right there in yellow expresses the same thing that what's above it in the two spots. That means x is less than 9, and it means that the graph, that the solutions are all smaller than 9. So the solutions start at negative infinity, they go all the way up to 9, but they don't include 9. So that's called interval notation. And if you notice, it's pretty quick to write that. I don't have to do the whole graph thing with the numbers, so it's quick to write that as an answer. Interval notation. Let's see another example. So if I look at the graph here, it looks like the answers start at 6 and go all the way up, and they continue to positive infinity. So let's see, on the left side, I need a 6. And on the right side, since we're going to positive infinity, I need the infinity symbol. Now, infinity always gets a parentheses. So on the right side, I'm going to put a right parentheses. But on the left side, I've got a closed circle. So I'm going to put a bracket. On the right side, since infinity always gets a parentheses, so that is the interval notation of the solutions. And if you read that in yellow, it says the solution starts at 6 and goes all the way to positive infinity. Now notice, positive infinity, we don't put a plus. Interval notation. So can you do this without a graph? You sure can. So you simply read what's there in yellow. It says the solutions are all bigger or equal to negative 21. So if the solutions are all bigger or equal to negative 21, it means negative 21 is the smallest number. That is the answer. So I need to start at negative 21, comma, and I'm going all the way up to positive infinity. So since it's greater than or equal to, I need a bracket for the negative 21, and infinity always gets a rounded parentheses. Okay, so in yellow there, that is what the blue states, just in a different way. How about this one? N is less than 3, so that means all the solutions are smaller than 3. Well, that means they start at negative infinity and they go all the way up to 3, but they don't include 3. Since infinity always gets a parentheses, the left side will have a parentheses, and the right side, hey, it's strictly less than, there's no line underneath it, so it will also get a parentheses. So there is that expression as answered with interval notation. All right. What about compound inequalities? Because this is part 2 of the compound inequality class. So let's look at that. So there's a compound and inequality. So it says G, which means the solutions are bigger than 5, but smaller than 9. Now, notice the 5 has a less than symbol, but no line underneath of it. So that means it doesn't include 5, right? So I need a parentheses, and I'm going all the way up to 9. So notice the 5 would get a parentheses. Why? Because there's no line underneath of it. But the 9 would get a bracket because it is less than or equal to. So that is clearly easier to write than that compound inequality right there. So the solutions are between 5 and 9. And after doing last night's homework where we had to graph our answers, clearly this is an easier way of writing the answer, interval notation. All right. Let's do one together. So if you know what you're doing, go ahead and pause the video. If not, let's do it together. All right, so that says, I'm going to read it, g is less than or equal to 9. Well, if you're smaller than 9, that means you're going to start at negative infinity and go up to 9. Since it's negative infinity, it gets a parentheses next to the infinity symbol, but the 9 is going to get a bracket because it's less than or equal to it, has a line. All right, so that in yellow expresses the answers go from negative infinity all the way to 9, including 9. All right, once again, if you know what you're doing, here's just 3 examples right here. Go ahead and try that. There's 3 examples right there. All right, here we go. Let's see, h is greater than negative 23. So that means you start at negative 3 and you go all the way up to positive infinity. And remember, infinity gets a parentheses. And since h is strictly greater than, it's not greater than or equal to, it gets a parentheses as well, too. The middle one is compound inequality. That means the numbers go from negative 6 to 19. That's pretty easy, negative 6 to 19. And since they're both less than or equal to, they get brackets. The last one, another compound inequality. These are pretty quickly done. I got negative 1 on the left, 2 on the right. I'm going to have a parentheses on the left and a bracket on the right because look, see where the line is? All right, got it? All right, cool. So there's our first objective. I can write inequalities in interval notation. All right, how about the reverse, right? Can you do the opposite? If I give you interval notation, can you either write the graph of it or can you write the inequality itself? All right, so you're gonna probably need to pause the video. Here are the steps, right? So if there's infinity involved in the interval notation, right? You're going to do the following steps. You're going to pick a variable. You're going to use the number. You're going to look at the brackets and parentheses, and you're going to ask yourself, are the solutions getting bigger or smaller? If there are 2 numbers, you're going to pick a variable. It means a letter. That letter will go in the middle. The small number goes to the left of that. The big number goes to the right. And you look to see if you have brackets or parentheses, and you put less than, greater than, depending upon what's there. All right, so here's an example of what that would look like if you had an infinity symbol. Here's what that would look like. You're going to follow those rules. Here's what it would look like if you had something in the middle. Okay. All right, so, oh, I'm sorry. Let me explain that slightly different. So here's the example. Now I understand what I did. Here's the example. All right, so let's see. I got a 2 and I got an infinity symbol. So I'm not the one on the left. There's not 2 numbers there. There's an infinity symbol, so I'm going to use those steps. So it says pick a variable. It means a letter. Any letter will work. I picked X. It says use the number. Well, the number is 2, right? So I need to put 2 there, right? And now you got to think about the interval notations. As if I read the interval notation, that's the one on the left, going from left to right, it says 2 comma infinity. That means you're going from 2 all the way to positive infinity. Well, that means X is increasing all the way to infinity. And since the 2 has a bracket, it's going to be greater than or equal to. If there wasn't a bracket, if there was a parentheses around the 2, then it would just be X is greater than 2. We need to see that again, don't we? All right, let's see that again. Oh, look, I got an infinity symbol. It's negative this time, so I'm still using that side. All right, so pick a letter, pick the number. Well, the number is there's only one number there because the other one's infinity. And then it says, look at the brackets or parentheses. Well, I got a parentheses around -4. Infinity always gets a parentheses. So that means I'm not going to include -4. That means I'm not going to have a line underneath my less than or greater than symbol. Now read the interval notation. I'm going from negative infinity all the way, I'm getting bigger to -4. So I need to be less than. So I'm going from -4 all the way down to negative infinity. So that means that the solutions are smaller than -4. So this one's a little bit weird because you intuitively want to say greater than. So that the answers are getting bigger all the way up to -4, but then they're stopping. So you're not getting any bigger than -4. You're only getting smaller than -4. All right. How about if we have 2 numbers? Hey, look, I got 2 numbers there. So I'm using this side. So let's see what the steps say. They say pick a letter. All right, pick a letter. It says the small number goes to the left, the bigger number goes to the right. So 1 is the small number, 7 is the big number. And now I just got to figure out whether it's greater than or less than. All right. Let's see. I am bigger than 1, but I am smaller than 7. So if you look at the X, I need to be bigger than 1. So that would be this symbol. X is bigger than 1. But I'm smaller than 7, and there's a bracket, so I need to be less than or equal to. So there is your answer. See another? All right. So I got the infinity symbol, so I'm using those right there. So let's see. Pick a letter, plug in the number, and now read the interval notation. I'm going from 7 and I'm going down to negative infinity. So I'm getting smaller, right? So that means less than. So is it less than or equal to? Well, it's less because I'm going to negative infinity. So I'm getting less than or equal to, because 7 is in a bracket. So it's less than or equal to. All right, here are 2 for practice. I gave you 1 of each flavor. Let's see if you can come up with the answer. Pause if you want to. If not, I'll walk you through it. All right, let's see. The first one, I've got 2 numbers. So it's I got to pick a letter. I'll pick X. I put the smaller number on the left, the bigger number on the right. So -2 and 12. So X is going to be bigger than -2, but smaller than 12. And since they're both brackets, I'm going to put the little line underneath of it. Less than or equal to, less than or equal to. How about the second one? Let's see. I got a -50. Oh, I got the infinity symbol. So I'm following the rules for infinity. It says pick a letter. I'm going to pick X. Use the number. I'm having -50. So I'm going from -50. I'm getting bigger, right? I'm going from -50 and I'm getting bigger. So I'm going to be greater than or equal to. Yeah, because there's a bracket there on -50. So X is going to be greater than or equal to -50. There we go. We're going through these pretty quickly. All right, so that's our second objective. We got 2 left. All right, so we're going to now take something in interval notation and graph the answer. So there's something in interval notation. It looks like we're going from -infinity all the way up to 10, but not including 10 because there's a parentheses around 10. If there was a bracket, we would use 10. So here's how it's done. Tick mark, right? Write the number right in the middle. I'm going from -infinity to 10. 10's going to get an open parentheses, right? I'm sorry, a open circle. There, I said it correct. And we're going to shade to the left because that's where -infinity is, to the left. So that red represents where all the answers are. All the answers are bigger than -infinity all the way up to 10. Let's see that again. So there's my, I got 2 numbers now. So this is going to be one of those and ones. So I'm going to have 2 numbers on the left, the smallest number, on the right, the biggest number. So I need 2 tick marks, right? So I need 2 and 9. We need a closed circle on 2, and I need an open circle on 9. Notice why, because I got parentheses and bracket. And then I just shade in between, right? Those are pretty easy. So with 2 numbers, you're always going to shade in between. 1 number, you're either shading left or right. I got 1 number, I'm going to be shading left or right. So let's see, I'm going from 4 to infinity. That means I'm going to be shading right. Tick mark, 4, open circle. Why? Because look, 4's got a parentheses, not a bracket. If there was a bracket, we would put a closed circle. Parentheses, we're going to put an open circle. And then I'm going to shade to the right, because if you read that, it says I'm going from 4 to positive infinity. Make sense? All right, how about this one? I got 2 numbers. I got -1 to 5, -1 to 5. So I need a number line that goes from -1 on the left to 5 on the right. And it's an open circle for both. Why? Because I got parentheses around both -1 and 5. Remember, brackets would be closed circle, parentheses are open circles, and then I shade in between. Will I always shade in between? Yes, you will. All right, well, we went through that one pretty quick. We only got one objective left. All right, so what about an or? So how about if we graph with an or? So the previous one were ands. These are the or ones. So remember, ors, we have to graph both of these on 1 number line. So we just do each one individually. So I need a number line that goes from -infinity to 1, and then from 3 to positive infinity. So I'm going to graph each one of these on 1 number line. So let's see, I'm going from -infinity to 1, and then I'm going from 3 to infinity. So the 2 numbers I need on my number line are 1 and 3. So if you look at the 1 there, I've got a bracket next to 1, so that means a closed circle, shade left, And the 3 has a parentheses, so I need an open circle on 3 shade right. So the 1 is going to shade to the left, the 3 is going to shade to the right. And there you go. There's your OR, and it just looks just like what our homework looked like last night. See that again? All right. So let's see, both of these on one number line. So all you got to do is look at the two numbers. I got a -4 and a 20. So your number line is going to have a -4 as your smallest number, 20 is my biggest number. You're like, don't I need other tick marks in between? Well, on the worksheet, they will already give you a full number line. But if you're doing this by hand, that's all you would need. So let's see, I'm going from -infinity to -4, and the -4 is going to have a open circle because it's parentheses. And the 20, since there's a bracket there, will have a closed circle, and I will shade to the right. And there you go. So that was 4 quick objectives. Those right there, writing inequality interval notation, write the interval notation as an inequality, graph a simple interval notation, and lastly, the big daddy of the day is I can graph interval notation when it's a compound inequality, and or an or. And that'll do it for today. If you run into any problems on the worksheet and you can catch me, either send me an email or catch me at lunch. And I'll see you guys tomorrow.